Wagwan, everybody. Lennox here from Simple123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for the week of March 21st to the 26th. Let's take a look at what's shaping up for this week in the futures markets. Hope everybody's doing well and are safe. All right, starting off with the Australian dollar. And the first thing I want to say today is that with the major pairs, Australian dollar, Euro, US dollar, Euro, GBP, New Zealand, USD, JPY, USD, CAD, and so forth. The key to the movements of these currency pairs is the US dollar. So I'll go through the list as normal, but the US dollar is what drives these major pairs. Or, for example, the euro, of course, is weighted about 70% of the US dollar, has 70% of the US dollar in its weighting. So whatever the euro is doing, the US dollar is the catalyst to its movement, and they move in the opposite directions. Okay, so let's take a look at Australian dollar on the weekly time frame. Again, we can see that we've reached a peak and have pulled back from that peak. So I want to go to the monthly time frame because from this peak, I like to see what's over to the left-hand side, and this helps us to get a bearing as to where we are overall in the structure of the chart. And based on this, it takes us right into a previous resistance area, and that's exactly where we came into with that spike, and then a rejection of price back down. Now we have a spinning top on the monthly, which is a little bit of an indecision, and what I'm seeing here is projected prices coming back down. Of course, this is the monthly, that could take a while to play out. So on the weekly time frame, the rejection of price is taking shape. It's pulled back. It's pulled back up again. We have now a head and shoulders pattern with neckline at this level. So we're right on the neckline currently. So again, we could see prices dropping through to the downside this week. So if that's correct, then that would mean a strong US dollar, more than likely going forward into this week. Okay, so we'll see if that's true and that holds out. Dropping to the daily time frame, we get a good picture of the overall now. So left shoulder, right shoulder, sort of. And I say sort of because you can see that we had quite a movement here, whereas on this side we've only had one move to the upside so far. So we could see a similar type of affair before we come back down and challenge these areas to the neckline. We've got the head, and so basically we could see some sideways movement before price starts to fall. So looking at again this week, it's weakness in the Aussie, at least in the short term. Okay, but we could see sideways movement as well. So it's all based on what the US dollar is going to do. So again, we'll look at that once I get to it. Bitcoin on the weekly time frame, lots of strength still wants to push to the upside here. And on the daily, what I'm seeing in Bitcoin is a continuation of this move. So it's looking, we might have a little bit of a pullback in the short term, but I would see continued strength and challenge of the previous highs more than likely coming into play. So this is on the daily right now, and we could see this challenge again, the second highs that it created last week. Okay, so that's Bitcoin. Crude oil. Crude oil, let's go to the weekly, also has been very strong. We did hit the previous resistance areas and broke through, but pulled back into it again. So we closed just about even with previous resistance, and then pull back into it. So are we going to continue higher, or are we going to drop? It looks more like a little bit of weakness taking place, and you can see we had quite the drop here. So the expected move would be maybe a slight move to the upside in the short term, but continued weakness into next week. So again, it's looking similar to a head and shoulders pattern setting up here as well. So we could see some continued weakness in crude oil by the end of the week. The Canadian dollar on the weekly has also been very strong, and again we reached a pinnacle. And looking at the monthly, we right inside the previous resistance area as well. So we're getting a rejection. We're still up in that area. So dropping down back down to the weekly, now we kind of have an idea where we are. We see that we're pulling back a little bit here. So on the daily and coming into this week, there is a bit of weakness. However, we could see further move back up in the short term. Okay, just a retrace of the current move down, because we've reached again back to that resistance area previously. So we broke through that high, went up higher, coming back to test that previous high. We could get a bounce of the Canadian dollar going into this week. Okay, so that is the Canadian dollar. Let's take a look at the US dollar futures index on the weekly. Okay, I'm going to go to the monthly on this one. All right, so what I'm seeing, support area here. So we've come right into that support area, but are we really done at this point? The move has been very strong down to this level, but it's looking like we will have another move still to come back down. So I'm kind of looking at this as a fake out move to the upside. Although it looks very strong, again, what I'm seeing is this move from here is not complete, and we're going to be getting another drop from this area here. Okay, so on the daily time frame, let's take a look at it. We are pushing back up, and we've touched or very close to the previous area, and we've basically just touched it. I think now I don't think we're going to push past it. I can see prices collapsing for the US dollar. So that will give us the impetus for Australian dollar moving back up in the short term, Canadian dollar moving back up in the short term if we get a drop in the US dollar. Okay. The euro. The euro is going to do the exact opposite of the US dollar. So right now, US dollar, any US dollar strength is giving us some weakness in the euro, but I see further strength happening in the euro. So we're right at a very crucial area, and I could see a turnaround happening here with a push back up to the upside going into this week. So looking on the daily, again, a very crucial area where we're sitting at, and this move could, we could see weakness in the short term to just a break of this level. Maybe just looks like, again, like a fake out move before we turn around and continue back to the upside. So we could see some short-term weakness as the US dollar climbs in the short term as well before we get that move to the upside. So that's the euro. The Swiss, quite the drop on the Swiss, but it looks like now we might have the brakes have been put on, and we could see a turnaround move back up in the short term this week for the Swiss. So it's a very strong area that it reached and breached, and now we could see this turnaround taking shape and pushing us back to the upside for the week. With gold, let me go to the monthly. I want to take a better look at this. On the monthly, we did breach a previous high. So we went right through nice and clean, but pulled back dramatically into this area. So are we ready for a turnaround and a push back to the upside? We came back down to this resistance area here. And now we've got a pin bar on the weekly. So that's giving us pointing us in a direction that, yes, maybe we could be turning around. Oh, sorry, that's the monthly. So on the weekly, we're turning, it seems like we're going to be turning around imminently. Okay, so we're at a very crucial point and at a turnaround, possible turnaround point. We've got a bit of a spinning top there, but we're moving to the upside. Dropping to the daily. Okay, that move to the downside might be complete, and we could see a move. In the short term, a pullback is probably forthcoming, and it is even possible, looking at this a little closer, that this move could take us back below this level one more time before we go. So a little bit iffy with gold in the short term. I would say we could see this roll over and break this level one time before we get that turnaround to the upside. So be aware of that. Okay. Japanese yen on the weekly. Quite the drop on the Japanese yen has been very weak, and the US dollar has been quite strong against it. And so it looks again on this one that we have reached another crucial point, and we could see a little bit of a turnaround in the Japanese yen going into this week. So quite the drop, possibility of a turnaround occurring at this point. We would see something to the effect of like that movement before we start going again. But it's still pretty weak, so it's not entirely, um, out of the question that we could see this continue down one more time before we finally get that turnaround. So be aware of the fact that we're at a very critical point, and there could be some volatility at this level. Okay, the New Zealand dollar. Let's go to the monthly. Very strong on the monthly. We've reached a critical point as well. We've got a rejection bar back down, and so we could be still looking at further weakness going into this week. So on the weekly time frame, we're starting to see that rejection. We could set up a head and shoulders as well. We could see a push back up to form that other shoulder before we get that drop and the neck break the neckline. So looking at it a little closer on the daily, it's definitely, like I say, possible that we could get that push back up, but looking pretty weak at this point here. So we are at a very, again, another critical point on with this chart. So if it follows what happened on this side, then we could see, up and down before we get there, before we get back to that level. So that's totally possible as well. So a little bit of indecision going into New Zealand, but the US dollar will be the key catalyst as well. So if we get a strong US dollar, we'll have weakness in the New Zealand dollar. And if we get a weak US dollar, we'll have strength in the New Zealand dollar. So right now in a bit of a flux at this point. Mexican peso. Mexican peso on the weekly. So we had quite the run to the upside, but now we've been coming down quite a bit, and we did have a nice turnaround at this point. So is that a catalyst for a continued move to the upside? That's totally possible, and also could be the end of that move to the upside as well. So looking at it here, we saw price busting to the upside, but it looks like we've reached that pinnacle, and we are going to, we have dropped actually. That's where I'm thinking price is up here. Price is actually here, so we have dropped like I thought would be the next move, and indeed quite the drop today. So on the open on the daily, so yeah, that would be the expected move as what I just drew. So that moved there up, reaching that very critical point a rejection, and then a drop. So we could see further weakness as we go into this week. We could actually see a pull back up to this area first before we see that drop, which is also forming a pseudo head and shoulders, and then a break up that neckline, and all bets are off, and we're heading back down. Okay, so that's what Mexican peso is shaping up as right there. Okay, let's take a look at the British pound on the weekly. Let's go to the monthly. Okay, so on the monthly, British pound, critical area, it made it into that previous resistance zone, and now we're seeing a little bit of a pullback. So British pound also relying on the US dollar. So if we see weakness in the US dollar, we'd expect strength in the British pound and vice versa. So right now, after this move here, it looks like we are at an area where we could definitely see a bit of consolidation, okay, before anything occurs, and that's what it's looking like at this point. So on the daily time frame, okay, that's what it appears to be occurring. So we've come back down, and now we're starting to get a bit volatile. Not There's no head and shoulders here or anything like that. So this could go up and down for a while as the U.S. dollar tries to find its way. So if the strength in the U.S. dollar, we will see weakness in the British pound, and if we see weakness in the U.S. dollar, we'll see strength in the British pound. But the emphasis and the onus right now uh, is looking like more weakness than strength at this point, based on the movements. Okay. Okay, that's British pound. Let's take a look at silver. Silver on the monthly has had quite quite a pullback in the last couple of months, and on the weekly time frame, you can see we've just been down. So we had a nice move to the upside, and now we're retracing all that move back down. So are we ready for a push back to the upside based on this level? That's totally possible. Dropping down to the daily time frame. Okay, we hit a very, again, another critical area. You can see right all the way across. And so are we ready for a push out of here with silver? That's totally a possibility. It looks very good for that to occur at this point, but it's going to take a while. We're on the daily, and this could take a while to play out, to even to get back to this level. So a little bit of strength going into this week for silver. US 2000, the Russell 2000 index. This chart is basically 90-degree vertical here. We can see that quite the move. We would need something, like this happening before we would see any further movements, I would say. But right now, it's pretty strong. You can see it's all green. A little bit of red on now happening on the weekly, and so we had quite a pullback. But is that the end of the move to the upside? Doesn't look like it at this point still. Okay, so yes, we had a little bit of a pullback, but it looks like we're at a critical point here as well. We could see further moves coming into this week. Of course, if I drop down a little lower, let me just go to the 4-hour, for example, and what we could be seeing is this move. We're just getting maybe a little bit of a pullback in here, and then we could continue again to the upside. So this pullback is probably short-lived, and will continue one more time to challenge the highs going into this week again for the Russell 2000. Okay, the next one is the Dow. And on the monthly, the Dow also in free territory has been very strong. On the weekly, also very strong. Are we done at this point? I don't think so. I think there's still some move to come. Yes, we dropped down a little bit, and that's to be expected after such a strong move in the last week or so. So I'm still seeing continued movements to the upside coming into this week. So this pullback is just we could come down a little bit lower, of course, before we go, but it's more than likely going to turn around and continue back to the upside. So maybe tomorrow we'll see a little bit of a dip before we get a turnaround. Okay. The S&P 500 on the monthly, also in free territory and running wild. So on the weekly time frame, still going very strong on the daily time frame. Similar type of setup. We're getting a pullback, but I think it's going to be short-lived. So looking at it on the 4-hour time frame as well, we can see what I'm seeing. It basically is a strong move off this drop. So we're back at a critical point, up turnaround possibility here. So we could see a little bit more weakness first, again, before we turn to the upside and continue the trend to challenge the previous highs again. Okay. The US Technology Group, let's go to the monthly on that one as well. Very strong, still looking quite strong here on the weekly time frame. Still pushing to the upside. So on the weekly, I'm seeing a similar structure, so we could see a continued movement out as well. So not giving up on the markets just yet, and this is a lot more prominent on the daily. You can really see the structure overall, and so it's looking like we're going to be pushing out. So in the short term, of course, we could see a further pullback before we turn around and continue to the upside. So a little bit of a weakness in the beginning of the session tomorrow, perhaps, but that could turn around pretty quickly and start heading back to the upside. All right, so that's a look at all the futures. My voice is going, and I hope everybody has a great week. Profitable trading to you all. Be safe. I'm done now. Thank you.